The 30th of November, 1954. This was the day the nation came together to celebrate the official 80th birthday of Prime Minister Sir Winston Churchill. At the climax of the ceremony, Parliament was going to present Churchill with a special gift, broadcast live on the BBC to homes all around the country. It was a portrait that would immortalise the greatest Briton of all.
Churchill was a national treasure in our house. We were rather a Labour Party family, but we made an exception for Winston Churchill because of the Second World War. Our kitchen was full of commemorative plates and mugs with his face on, that sort of thing. I can recall my parents being very excited about the ceremony, and everyone kind of knew that he was getting older, and that they wanted some great climactic moment to say thank you.
This was the moment everyone had been waiting for, not least Churchill himself. A year earlier, he had suffered a stroke. He made a good recovery, but everyone suspected that he might no longer be fit for office. So for Churchill, what lay behind the curtain was more than a commemorative portrait. It had to be a symbol of eternal youth, an image that would stay in the public consciousness forever. The story of the painting began 3 months earlier at Churchill's home of Chartwell. As a keen amateur, he had his own painting studio. It was here that he sat for the all-important portrait. On the other side of the easel stood the painter Graham Sutherland. Sutherland had a number of commissioned portraits under his belt, including the documentarian Sir Kenneth Clarke. However, in much of his early work, he did everything he could to avoid depicting the human figure. He revered the English countryside and painted pastoral scenes in which the inhabitants are absent. In their place, a depiction of transcendent nature and a wildly religious veneration of the national landscape. It was a world apart from the ideals and posturing of politicians. So, when he sat down to paint Churchill, he saw the mantle of a figure whose reputation preceded his face. Desperate to find something of the wild landscapes he loved to paint, he resolved to paint Churchill, in his own words, as a rock. When the painting was revealed, what the audience saw was nothing like they had expected. It was not what Churchill had wanted. No medals, no stoic resolve, just the weight of a man in a chair.
When the curtain draws back, you can hear a few gasps, but for the most part, everyone is just rolling about laughing. Except for Sir Winston, of course. And Sutherland looks pretty gloomy as well. And if you look at the footage closely, you can see him squirming in the background. The extent to which both parties have been wounded is really palpable.
Churchill's entourage knew that the public couldn't be exposed to the image again. They believed it to be a symbol of weakness and feared that it could signal the end of his political career, leaving the public leaderless and confused. Its mere presence in the collection at Chartwell was starting to gnaw at their peace of mind. Action had to be taken. They issued secret instructions to Sir Winston's private secretary that the portrait was to be destroyed. Under the cover of darkness, the secretary and her brother drove it to a nearby farmhouse, where they placed it atop a bonfire and set it alight. For the time being, the threat had been vanquished. The rumours of the painting's demise were suppressed rather well for several years, but in 1978, the Sunday Times ran a story speculating that Sutherland's work may no longer be in existence. The article was read by none other than Rupert Murdoch, who immediately became obsessed with the fate of the painting. Upon purchasing the Sunday Times in 1981, he searched through the newspaper's archive to no avail. Murdoch was desperate to know more, engrossed by the prospect of an image so obscene that it had been stolen from the view of the public. He reached out to Sutherland to try and understand why it was destroyed. Their encounter was documented in one of Murdoch's personal recordings.
Sutherland? Hello, Mr. Sutherland. This is reporter, Rudolph Myrtle. I'm phoning from the desk of the Sunday Times. I see. I'd like to talk to you about your commission for Churchill. Ah, the portrait of Sir Winston. That's correct. I assume you've had the rumours by now. I have, yes. So what do you make of them? Oh, it's not my place to speculate. Ah, come on, you painted the damn thing. Yes, but I don't know what happened to it. And, what if it had been destroyed? Well, they did pay for it, I suppose. Could you describe the painting for me? Describe it for you? Yes, don't leave anything out. Okay, well, it's on a large square canvas. Yes. I used some oil paint. Oh yeah, what colours? Well, the background is brown. There's a leather armchair. And what about the man himself? Well, his suit is brown too. Be more specific. The sort of dress. Good. Yes, and his skin. Yes, his skin. Skin is, well, I'd call it desert sand. Like our Birch ham? I suppose so, yes. Rather like yellowish ham. Perfect. Does it crawl? Well, I don't know if crawl is too strong a term. I bet it's absolutely fucking rising, isn't it? Is this going to be in the paper?
Murdoch always loved that sort of thing. Still does today. I recall a recent news story where he was caught going through Theresa May's recycling, trying to find the bits of cardboard that hold rolls of toilet paper together. Apparently he was so in awe of her that he couldn't believe that she actually defecates.
But Murdoch never got his proof, and the portrait never saw the light of day. With the painting out of sight, what the Churchills left behind instead was a look and gesture that can be invoked by anyone who wishes to conjure up good old British stoicism and resolve.
Churchill's look, hat and cigar, are synonymous with the wartime spirit. Oh yes. All it takes is a hand signal. Anyone can do it.
Many politicians have worn Sir Winston at moments of national importance. Oh yes, he's even been used to show us when the hat and cigar don't fit. And it's not just individuals who can use that eponymous look to fit the mood. Oh yes, the Imperial War Museum puts more copies of his face on posters and mugs than they show in the entire collection, which has proved to be a problem for the experts.
In the early 80s, the Institute of Historical Research realised that public knowledge about him was gaining more traction than the information that they compiled up to that point. His reputation was getting out of hand. And the situation culminated when, as if by jingoistic possession, Westminster actually unified to intervene in the Falkland Islands. So the Institute's board of directors hired a spirit medium.
The medium in question was the notorious Leslie Flint, hailed by spiritualists as the best psychic medium of the 20th century. April the 17th, 1982, he was summoned for a private viewing of the Churchill War Rooms, and the following recording was made.
The world of spirit, for centuries upon centuries of time, has endeavoured by influence, by impression, by thought force, has endeavoured to change the thoughts of men with very, very little result. vanish things. Man is standing at this present moment on the brink of destruction. These people, who God, consider them extraordinarily talented and clever and wise.
The Institute's board of directors had hoped to learn what had happened to Churchill's voice, but the findings of the study had to be discarded when they discovered that Flint had faked the whole thing using a cunning combination of mimicry and vocal control. Today, Churchill's look is still firmly embedded within public iconography. Its status was secured by the person who made sure that Sutherland's portrait would never be seen again.
In the whole affair, Grace was a bit player. She was never acting with the intention to suppress what the Churchills didn't want the public to see. I don't know. It just happened. In her eyes, it was more to do with the fact that they found it ugly.
Do you remember the Sutherland portrait of Sir Winston?
The portrait?
The portrait that he
Very
hated.
well. I do indeed. Oh, it was so terrible. Great drama. He hated it.
Yes.
Oh, he loathed it.
So did Lady Churchill. I mean, it is
Well,
no
Lady
more.
Churchill, you see, she was a person who, for one thing, she didn't want it to go down to posterity, because she felt it didn't do him justice. In fact, much stronger than that. It made him hideous.
Yes.
And she thought it was a terrible shame that posterity should see him like that. And after all, it was a gift to them. They could do what they liked with it, surely.
Mm.
I think that's how she felt anyway.
Oh, she did, yes.
So she had it destroyed. I think for the purpose of this thing, I can be frank about it, because it is a private
Mm-hmm. We
thing,
can
but
also close it for 30
what
years.
really happened to it was that I destroyed it myself.
Oh, you did!
Well, I couldn't do it alone because it was a huge thing, and Lady Churchill was very much exercised in her mind about what she should do. So she said, "Now, Grace, what can you suggest about this?" So I said, "Well, my brother was alive then," and I said, "I think my brother would help us." So at dark,
She had already decided to get rid of it.
oh yes. So at dead of night in the dark, we had took it away in a van, and we took it to his house and burnt it in his garden.
Where was that?
He lived not a few miles away. But of course it was a deadly secret. I don't think I've ever told anyone before. In a car outside here all day long to try and interview me, and I got so fed up with seeing them there. Finally I went out and said, "Did you want to see me about something?" They said, "Well, we want to know who destroyed the thing," and I said, "I'm afraid I don't know," and that was all they got.
Well, when was it known that it was destroyed? I mean, it couldn't have been known the minute it was done. could it?
No, it wasn't known because Mary didn't know.
In fact, no one knew.
No one
except you.
knew. No, and no, because Lady C and I decided we wouldn't tell anyone. Because you don't, I mean, once a thing like that
Oh, it was a
comes,
huge.
and it would make life impossible for me. I think she was thinking, anyway. But Mary, when Lady Churchill died, before Lady Churchill died, she told Mary.
Uh-huh.
And then after, wasn't there a terrible comeback about it, wasn't there? I wonder how that all started. I know the press suddenly roared up and wanted to know
Yes.
what happened. And Mary made a statement, didn't she, and said, "Oh, there was a letter to Sutherland, wasn't there? Didn't she publish a letter to Sutherland or something? I can't remember the details.
No, I don't.
Or was it Sutherland dead? Didn't he die? Was it when he died?
It could be that.
there was something that made her...
But it did come up again.
It did, that's
Yes.
right. And Mary thought we'd better come out in the clear, so she made a press statement, didn't she, to say that it had been destroyed. She didn't say how or when and so on. And she was very good. She made me go and see her solicitor and swear an affidavit about how it was done and so on, because it might come up again in 50 or 100 years'
Yes.
time.
Yes.
And she says she doesn't want anyone to be afflicted by it, or,
Yes.
you know, so fine, then the truth can come out. And I've done
Did you
this.
realise the enormity of it? I mean, this was a, you know, a famous portrait by a famous author, artist, which the House of Commons and the House of Lords had given this great man.
Terrible, really, wasn't it? Still, it wants to do.
No, but at the time you were doing it, how much did you...
Well, I think we just wanted to get on with it before anyone came along. Get it done, you know. Oh dear, oh dear.
When was it destroyed? Do you remember? I mean, did Sir Winston know that it had been?
Oh, I don't think it was terribly long after. See, my
After it
brother was still alive. What year was Sir Winston's birthday?
He was born in 74.
So his 80th birthday was in
54.
54.